Thank you all so much for coming to see the show. We are seniors here at Carlmont, but have been in the drama department since we were freshmen and have been directing this show for the past few months. We thank you all again so much for coming. Everyone who's worked on the show has spent so much time and energy, and we are all immensely proud of the importance of being earnest.
We have some people that we would like to thank. First, all of the parents of our cast and crew for keeping our cast and crew fed, for doing stuff for us behind the scenes. We really couldn't pull this off without them. Nancy Melvin, Emily Cook, Gail Welter, Angela Boland, Monique Bobadilla, all of the parents for letting their children spend their afternoons with us, and our parents for being so supportive and understanding. We've been spending more time in the theater than at home lately, and we appreciate their understanding.
My dad. We would also like to thank the people that helped us backstage, Nancy Martin, Jeff Horn, and all of our amazing tech and crew, without whom none of this would have been possible. Before we can begin, we have a few preliminary matters to discuss. In case of an emergency, exits are located the door you came in, that door to your left behind the curtain, and that door to your right behind the curtain.
Next, we ask that you silence all cell phones, small children, anything else that may make noise during the performance.
We have two 10-minute intermissions between the acts, during which concessions will be sold in the lobby. Please buy things or donate. However, if you do buy anything, please do not bring any food or drink into the theater.
Lastly, our wonderful stagehands will be moving around during intermissions, changing the sets. So we ask that if you do decide to leave the theater, please do so quickly and move close to the risers. Again, thank you all so much for coming, and we hope you enjoy
The Importance of Being Earnest.
To listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with the most wonderful expression as far as the piano is concerned. Sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of science for life, did you get the cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, Lane, I see from your booking on Thursday night when I was dining with Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing, you bought 8 bottles of champagne down as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I've only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between me and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem as a class to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary for someone in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
The country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
By the way, Shropshire's your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolyn.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolyn is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as terrible as the way Gwendolyn flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolyn. I have come into town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one usually is, I suppose, but then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories were so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches, I find Augusta especially.
But you have been eating them all the time.
That is a completely different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is.
My dear fellow, you need not eat as if you're going to eat it all. You act as if you're married already. You are not married already. I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
But that is nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the grand number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Gwendolyn is my cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, we'll have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean by Cecily? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Oh, bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left when we were dining here last.
Yes,
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I had written frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no use offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think it is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter, for now that I look upon the inscription inside, I find the things are yours after all.
Of course it is mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you've no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on that.
I'm quite aware of the fact, but I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk about in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too, lives at Tunbridge Wells. Now give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why is she your aunt if she calls herself Little Cecily and lives in Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. Surely that is a matter that an aunt may be able to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. Now give it back to me, Algy.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my life. It's on your cards. Here is one of them. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll certainly keep this as proof if you ever try to deny your name not being Ernest, to me, to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else for that matter.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And that cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, But that does not account for the small fact that your aunt, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. Come on, boy, you better have the thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It is very vulgar for one to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists do. No, go on, might I add that I have always suspected you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
A Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you were to produce to me why you were Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, go on, tell me your story, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the admirable care of her governess, Miss Prism.
Where's your place in the country, by the way?
Oh, that is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you quite candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, I don't know whether you will be able to fully understand my motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so, and as a moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to escape to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother, by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear young friend, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Well, that wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave that to those who haven't graduated from a university. I do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a useful brother called Earnest in order that you may be able to go down into London whenever you like. I have created a perfect invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go out into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. No one frustrates someone so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, she will treat me as a member of the family and either send me down with no woman at all, or 2. In the third place, I know very well who she will sit me next to, Miss Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her husband across the dinner table. It is not pleasant. In fact, it's not even decent. The amount of women flirting with their husbands over the dinner table is perfectly absurd. It is washing one's own linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about it. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist. In fact, if Gwendolen accepts me, I am going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily has become a bit too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So I'm going to kill my brother, and I strongly advise that you do the same with your with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury, and if you ever try to get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Oh, that is nonsense. If I marry a charming young girl like Gwendolen, and she is the only girl I ever saw that I would marry, I most certainly would not want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realise that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young friend, is the corrupt theory that the French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and that the happy English home proved in half the time.
But for heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It is perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't perfectly easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition going about.
Ah! That
be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in the Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get Aunt Augusta out of the way for 10 minutes so you may have the opportunity of proposing to Gwendolyn, can I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes. But you must be serious about it. I hate people who aren't serious about meals. It's so shallow.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
Oh, I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments. And I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolyn?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Where are the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially!
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers!
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very sorry, Aunt Augusta. There were no cucumbers in the market this morning. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I am going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid I'll have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight, Aunt Augusta.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment, but the fact is, I have just received a telegram telling me my cousin Bunbury is extremely ill. They seem to think I shall be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes. Poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I am always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be so kind to not have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
Speak to Aunt Augusta. Speak to Bunbury. If he is still conscious, and I think I can tell you he will be all right by Saturday. As for the music, I'll do my best. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen, and if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But already the program I've drawn out, if you'll kindly come into the next room with me for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming weather we are having, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
But I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
and I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Gwendolyn, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact. And I only wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolyn.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know, but perhaps it was something else. You don't mean to say that you couldn't love me then.
Ah, well that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, there's very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life, as we know them.
Personally, darling, I don't care very much for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think that Jack, for example, is a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name of Jack, if any at all, indeed. It is not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. We must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, yes, of course. I love you, Gwendolyn. And you lead me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you are not entirely different to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it'd be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolyn.
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
Well, you know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one? I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you.
Ah!
Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
Mamma, Mr. Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage! You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Lady Bracknell, I prefer standing.
Well, I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tempers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to either be a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with, of course, some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. Of course, I don't depend on that for my actual income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make out anything of it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I have a townhouse in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to a Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at a 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham?
She's
I don't know her.
the lady considerably advanced in years. She goes out very little.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us. Or come in the evening, at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I seem to have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Mourning, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I don't really know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said that I lost both my parents. It would be near to the fact to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I was found.
Found?
The old Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me, and he gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman who had this first-class ticket for this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Plain, large, black leather handbag with handles to it. A perfectly ordinary handbag.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in this state for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. And I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
Hardly say that I would do anything to ensure Gwendolyn's happiness?
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't know how I could possibly do that. I could produce for you the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I hope that would satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What does it have to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For goodness sake, Algie! Don't play that ghastly tune! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolyn refused you? I know it is a way she has. That silly Gwendolyn is always refusing people. I think this is most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolyn is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged, but her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't even know what a gorgon is like, but I am sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't speak this way of your aunt in front of you.
Oh, no, do go on. I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the slightest knowledge on how to live, nor the smallest instinct of when to die.
That is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue with you about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I felt that, I'd shoot myself. You don't suppose there's any chance of Gwendolyn becoming like her mother in about 150 years or so, do you, Algie?
Every woman becomes like their mother. That's their tragedy. No man does, that is.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I'm sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The whole thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness there were a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, the clever people, of course.
What nonsense.
Oh, by the way, did you tell Gwendolyn about your being Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a nice young refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain.
This is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Well, I shall have gotten rid of him by the end of the week. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die in Paris quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they, Algie?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the kind of thing that runs in families. You'd much say, severe chill.
And you're sure that a severe chill is not hereditary or anything of the kind?
Quite sure.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest will be suddenly carried off in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said, Miss Cardew is closely connected to Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a good deal?
That is not a matter. Miss Cardew, I'm glad to say, is not a silly romantic girl. She has got a capital appetite, goes long walks and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
Oh, I will make certain that you do not. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
Does Miss Fairfax know you have an excessively pretty ward who is only 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt those things out. Gwendolyn and Cecily are destined to become great friends. I'll bet you anything that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they call each other plenty of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and change. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
Yes, but I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after? Shall we go to a theatre?
No, I loathe listening.
Well, let us go to the club.
No, I hate talking.
Then, We might trot around the Empire around 10.
I cannot bear to look at things. It is so silly.
Then what on earth shall we do?
Nothing.
It is awfully hard work doing nothing. However, I don't mind doing nothing when there's no definite object of any kind.
And that is nonsense, Algy. You never speak anything but nonsense.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen? Upon my word!
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this until...
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own one.
Ernest, I fear we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Any influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
My own one.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Now, your town address at the Albany I have, but what is your address in the country?
Well, my address in the country is the Manor House in Walton, Hertfordshire.
Well, there's a postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. All that, of course, will require serious consideration.
My own darling.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage.
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunbury.
Yes, sir.
Probably won't be back till Monday. You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I'll do my best to give satisfaction.
Now there is a sensible, intellectual girl. The only one I've ever cared for in my life. What are you so amused at?
Oh, nothing. I'm just a little anxious about poor Bunbury is all.
If you're not careful, your poor friend Bunbury will get you into some serious scrape one day.
I love scrapes. They're the only thing that's never serious.
But this is nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Cecily, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of the flowers is rather Morton's duty than yours, especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson. But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I looked quite plain after my German lesson. Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he was leaving for town. Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot speak quite well. Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
Perhaps that is why he always looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. And you must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could produce any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I do not think I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people good at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that haven't happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Muddy sends us.
Oh, do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I myself wrote one in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. And I hope it didn't end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Oh, alas, no. The manuscript was unfortunately abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good if she were to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything
About a headache? No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt it instinctively. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her very lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as, by all accounts, that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia. Doctor?
A classical allusion merely drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear doctor, that I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, dear Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence? The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. I find it somewhat too sensational.
Even these metallic problems have their melodramatic side.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German!
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He's brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany West. Uncle Jack's brother! Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was still in town?
Yes, Miss, he seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Pray ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better speak to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, Miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does!
You are my little cousin Sesame, I'm sure.
You are under some mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are my Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think I'm wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us in a most inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and really being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
In fact, I have been quite bad in my own small way.
Don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
That is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up to London first thing Monday morning. I have a business appointment I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Oh, well, of course I know the importance it is to not keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But I still think you had better wait until Uncle Jack comes back. I know he wants to speak with you about your emigrating.
About my what?
Your emigrating. He's gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I have received of Australia are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid I'm not that. That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is very quixotic of you, but I think we should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me! I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one needs regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thanks. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any sort of appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marischal Neil?
No. Sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
And Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You're the prettiest girl I ever saw in my life.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
And they are a snare every sensible man should like to be caught.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I should know what to talk to him about.
Hello, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
Well, that is obviously the reason why the primitive church has lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive, except to his wife.
And often I've heard not even to her.
Well, that depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing,
Mr. Worthing!
this is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother,
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
dead.
Your brother Ernest dead.
Dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
But no, he died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I got a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prison, Charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt want me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful, or as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and on festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop, who was present, was much struck by some of the analogies that I drew.
That reminds me, Dr. Chasuble, you mentioned christenings, I believe. That is, you do know how to christen? I mean, of course, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they do not seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you are interested, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried.
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
Oh, but it is not for any child, dear doctor. I'm very fond of children, no. But the fact is, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
But have you not been christened already?
I don't remember anything about it.
Have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to. Of course, I'm not sure if the whole thing would upset you in any way, or if you think that I'm a bit too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary and indeed advisable. Our weather is So changeable. At what time would you like the ceremony to be performed?
I might toss round about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently on an outlying cottage on your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter, a most hard-working man.
No, I would not want to be christened among the other babies. I would find it childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am glad to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them. Sesame!
My child, my child!
Uncle Jack, what is the matter? Do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache. And I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room right now? Your brother!
Who?
Brother Ernest, he arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, Uncle Jack, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know at all what to make of that. I think it is perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John! I've come down from town expressly to tell you I'm sorry for the life I've been leading, and I intend to lead a better one in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
I think his coming down here is disgraceful, and he knows perfectly well why.
Oh, do be nice, Uncle Jack. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. But surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid, and who leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he has been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury. Well, I won't have him talk about Bunbury or anything else for that matter. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I admit the faults were all on my side, but I must say, I find Brother John's coldness to me peculiarly painful. I expected a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it is the first time I have come here.
Uncle Jack, if you won't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never.
Never, never, never.
Well, it is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Aldy! You have got to get out of this place as soon as possible. I do not allow any Bunbury here.
I've put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
His luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage!
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large luncheon basket.
I'm afraid I won't be able to stay for more than a week this time.
Merryweather, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Earnest has suddenly been called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack! I haven't been called back to town at all!
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures in the smallest degree.
I have no doubt about that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You will not talk about Miss Cardew like that. I don't allow it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up in change? It is perfectly ridiculous to be in deep mourning for a man who is staying with you in your house for a whole week as your guest. I call it grotesque.
You are not staying with me as a guest for a week, as a guest or for as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
I certainly won't leave you so long as you were in mourning. I think it most unfriendly if I did. You'd do the same for me, I suppose.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes. If you're not too long, well, I've never seen someone take so long to dress. And with such little resolve.
Well, it is certainly better than always being overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to go by the 4:05 train, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I believe this bunburying has been a great success for me. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go. Ah, there she is!
Oh, I nearly came back to watch the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, he's going to take you for a nice drive.
I'm afraid so. It's a very painful parting.
We have got to part. It always is painful to part from one who someone has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from someone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait Merryweather for her. 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope I shall not offend you, Cecily. If I'm to state quite frankly, you seem to be, to me, the visible personification of perfection.
Ernest, your frankness does you great credit. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no! It is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it comes out in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But don't stop now, Ernest. I delight in taking down dictation from others. I have reached perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, Ernest, don't cough. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell cough.
Cecily, ever since I first looked upon your wondrous gaze, I have desired to love you wildly, devotedly, passionately, hopelessly.
I don't think it makes much sense for you to love me wildly, devotedly, passionately, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense now, does it?
Cecily,
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
tell it to come around next week at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew that you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Uncle Jack. I don't care about anyone in the world but you. I love you, Cecily. You will marry me, won't you?
Oh, you silly boy, of course! Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months!
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
But how did we become engaged?
Well, ever since Uncle Jack first confessed that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you of course became the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism, and of course a man who is always much talked about is very attractive. One feels there must be something more to him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling, and when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I was determined to end the matter one way or another. And after a long struggle with myself, I finally accepted you under that dear tree over there. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this is the bangle with the true lover's knot that I promised you always to wear.
Did I give you this? Very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, Ernest, you've wonderful taste. It's the excuse I've always given you for your leading such a bad life. So this is the box in which I keep all your darling letters.
My letters? But Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
There is no need to remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write your letters for you. I always wrote 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Do you let me read them, Cecily?
Oh, no, that would be far too conceited. The last 3 you wrote after I broke off the engagement are so very beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can't read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Yes, on the 22nd of last March. You can read the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why? What on earth had I done? Cecily, I'm very indeed hurt to hear you broke it off with me. Particularly when the weather was so charming.
Well, it wouldn't have been a proper engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are, Cecily.
You sweet, romantic boy. I hope your hair falls naturally. Does it?
Yes, darling. With a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
We'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I don't think I could, now that I've actually met you. Besides, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
Mustn't laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish fantasy of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But could you not love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like.
But I don't like the name of Algernon.
Well, my dear sweet Cecily, I really don't see why you should object to the name of Algernon. It is a rather aristocratic name. More than half the chaps in bankruptcy court are called Algernon. But really, Cecily, could you not love me if I had some other name?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I do not think I would be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector's here, I suppose, though experienced through the malls of the church.
Oh, yes, Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has not written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
I must see Dr. Chasuble at once on a most important christening. On most important business.
Oh?
I shan't be more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I've only just met you for the first time today, I think it is rather hard that you should ask to be away from me so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
Miss Fairfax just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business in Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Ask the lady to come here. Mr. Worthing is sure to come back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. Surely one of the many good-natured elderly women associated with Uncle Jack through some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are involved in philanthropic work. I think it is very forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Sesame Cardew. What a very sweet name. I'm sure we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How kind of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Won't you sit down?
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
if you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose?
No, I don't think so.
Papa, I'm glad to say, is entirely unknown outside the family circle. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system. So would you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose.
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Well, your mother, no doubt, or some other female relative of advanced years resides here also?
No, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward. Oh,
It is strange he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I cannot say, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I am very fond of you. I've liked you ever since I met you. However, I'm bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little bit older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly,
pray do so. I believe that whenever one has something unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the physical charms of others. Modern, no less ancient history provides us with many of the most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes?
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm afraid we have not been on good terms for a very long time.
That accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Oh, Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My dear Cecily, I feel there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to be married to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You must be under some strange misconception, for Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It's certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so.
I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I am so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I could possibly say, dearest Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor boy has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten himself into, I will not reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? Oh, you are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an entanglement? How dare you! This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss? Yes, as usual.
Are there any interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
A good many. From the tops of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common in the country, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I can't understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
I believe this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I am told the aristocracy are suffering from it very much, just at present. It is almost an epidemic among them, I've been told. May I offer you tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you, detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax, please.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, sweet, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
I distrusted you from the moment I saw you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I'm trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Oh, Ernest! My own Ernest!
Gwendolen, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cecily? Of course not. What could have put such a silly idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax, for the gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh,
This is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolyn.
Of course not. What could put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
Miss Cardew, I felt that there must be some slight error. The gentleman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief.
Oh!
Are you called Algernon?
Cannot deny it.
Oh! Is your name really John?
I can deny it if I like. I can deny anything if I like, but my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
Gross deception has been practiced on both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily, my sweet wronged Gwendolyn. You will call me sister, will you not?
There's just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it pains me very much to be forced to speak the truth. This is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a position. And quite frankly, I'm really inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. But to speak quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I have never had a brother, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all.
None.
Not even of any kind
Never.
ever?
Not of any kind.
It is clear to me, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant situation for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let us go at once into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes, a most wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I have ever seen in my life.
Well, you have no right to Bunbury here.
That is absurd. One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist! Good heavens!
Well, one must be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunbury. What you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You're such absolute trivial nature.
The only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to go down to the country quite as often as you used to, dear Algie, and a very good thing too.
Your brother is looking a little off colour, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run down to town quite so often as your wicked custom was. And that's a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that your taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward!
I can see no possible defence of your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced woman like Miss Fairfax. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolyn, that is all! I love her!
I wanted to be engaged to Cecily, that is all. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there is much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax ever being united.
That is no business of yours.
Yes. If it were, I wouldn't talk about it. It's very vulgar to talk about one's own business.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins while we are in this horrible trouble? I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
Well, I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner. The butter would probably get on my cup. If one is to eat muffins, they should always do so quite calmly.
I say, it is perfectly heartless. You're eating muffins at all.
When I'm in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in really great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I accept nothing but food and drink. At the present moment, I'm eating muffins because I'm unhappy.
Well, that is no reason to eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you would have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be. But muffins are the same.
Algie, I wish to goodness you would go.
I certainly won't leave. I've never eaten at my dinner yet. I never leave without my dinner. No one ever does, except vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I made arrangements to be christened with Dr. Chasuble at 5:45 under the name of Earnest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and naturally I will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We cannot both be christened Ernest, that's absurd. And besides, I have the natural right to be christened if I would like to. There is no evidence that I ever have been. I should think it extremely probable I never was, and Dr. Chasuble agrees. It is entirely different in your case. You have already been christened.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
You have been christened, that is the important thing.
Quite so. So, I know my constitution can stand it, but I must say, if you're not sure about your ever having been christened, I don't think you should venture on it now. It might make you extremely ill. You can hardly forget someone very closely connected with you was recently carried off in Paris by a severe chill.
But you said yourself that a severe chill is not hereditary.
It used to be, my dear fellow, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
That is nonsense.
Jack, you are at the muffins again! I wish to goodness you wouldn't! There are only two left! I told you. I was particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake!
Then why on earth do you like to be served up to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon, I have already told you to leave. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet, and there is still one muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left. They have been eating muffins. That is surely a sign of repentance. They don't notice us at all. Couldn't you cough? But I haven't got a cough. They're looking at us. What effrontery! They're approaching. That's very forward of them. Let us preserve a dignified silence. Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to say to you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolen, common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I might have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems like a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. That does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of severe importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have the opportunity of coming up to town as often as possible to see me?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the moment for German skepticism. Their explanations may be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then should we forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no!
True. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly.
Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? What time are we going to be Christian this afternoon?
For my sake, you're prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are willing to face this fearful ordeal?
I am.
How absurd to talk about the equality of the sexes. When matters of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
Moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling!
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens! Gwendolyn! What does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here! Sit down! Sit down immediately! Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young, of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am glad to say, under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture at the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But, of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolyn, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now as regards Algernon. Algernon,
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend Mr. Bunbury resides?
Oh, no, Bunbury doesn't live here. Bunbury's somewhere else at present. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he a victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, I mean, he was found out. The doctors found he cannot live, that is what I mean, so Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whom my nephew Algernon is now holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I'm engaged to be married to Sesame, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything particularly exciting in the air of this peculiar part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seems to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea if there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew, Lady Bracknell, is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrave Square, Southwest, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran, Fifeshire northbound.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I've known strange errors in that publication.
Well, Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I also have in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, and confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
Ah, life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favour of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We've not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask you if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
About £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Good day, Lady Bracknell. It's so pleased to have seen you.
A moment! Mr. Worthing. £130,000. And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young lady now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities. Any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair seems almost as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces a really marvellous result in a very brief space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months, her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn round, sweet child. No, the side view is what I want. Yes, quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points of our age are its wants of principle and its wants of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. They are worn very high, just at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the sweetest, dearest, most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my life. And I don't care twopence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debts to depend on, but I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed for a moment of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
Pray excuse me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting, but this engagement is quite out of the question. I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say an ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more can one desire?
Pains me very much, Lady Bracknell, to have to speak frankly to you about your nephew, but I'm afraid I don't at all approve of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Oh, untruthful! My nephew Algernon, impossible! He is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London out on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house under the false pretense of being my brother. He drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Chateau de Tour 89 wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded throughout the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently stayed to tea where he stayed to tea where he ate every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is, he has known from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I do not intend to have a brother anytime in the future. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
How extremely generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, dear. How old are you, sweet child?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 whenever I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be very long until you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
Pardon me, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting again, but it is only fair that I tell you that according to the terms of Miss Cardew's grandfather's will, Cecily does not come of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who have, of their own free choice, remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbledon is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40, which was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could, Cecily. You know I could.
Yes, I felt instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for everything. It always makes me rather cross. I'm not a punctual person myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others, and waiting even to be married is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say seems to me to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But dear Lady Bracknell, the decision is entirely in your own hands. Why, the moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolyn, I will most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all that any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolyn. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more might expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christening.
The christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these men have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he knew that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
It appears, Dr. Chasuble, that as things are now, it would not be of much practical use to either of us.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists, views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. But as your current mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. In fact, I have just been informed by a pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prison has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prison? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prison?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter could prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She's the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
Pitt is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told that you expected me in the vestry, dear Colin. I have been waiting for you there for an hour and 3/4.
number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there! Prism! Where is that baby?
I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish that I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I also had with me a somewhat old, capacious handbag in which I intended to place the work of fiction that I had written during my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet, and I placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag, Miss Prism?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait for you here all my life.
What do you suppose this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack appears to be strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are almost always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
Suspense is terrible. I hope it'll last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it very carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, it appears to be mine. Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street or Nimbus in younger and happier days. Here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here, on the lock, are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It has been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
More is restored to you than this handbag, Miss Prism. I was the baby you placed inside it.
You?
Yes. Mother.
Mr. Worthing! Unmarried!
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance but wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can show you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive. Would you kindly inform me of who I am?
I am afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother! I always knew I had a brother! I said I had a brother! Cecily! How could you have ever doubted that I have a brother? Stop Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. You young scoundrel, Algy, you have got to start treating me like a brother. You have never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Not till today, my own friend. I did my best, however. Though I tried my best.
Oh, my own! But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Oh, good heavens. I'd quite forgotten the point. Your decision on my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Well, it's better be settled then. Aunt Augusta, at the moment I was placed in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then it is settled. I was christened. What name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
And what was my father's Christian name?
Well, I cannot at the present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate, and marriage, and indigestion, and other things of that kind.
Algy, can you recall what our father's Christian name was?
Dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list of the past 40 years are here. Oh, these delightful records should have been my constant study. Generals. Marlon, Moxley, Maudsley. Oh, what ghastly names they have. Let's see, Moggs, Moxby, Lieutenant, Moncrief, 1864, Lieutenant Colonel, Christian name, Ernest John. I told you my name was Ernest, Gwendolyn, I really did, and it isn't naturally as Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking the name.
My own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to suddenly find out that all of his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one.
Letitia!
Frederick, at last!
Sesame! At last!
Gwendolyn, at last!
My nephew! You seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.